Welcome to the Earthworks Podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Welcome to another Earthworks Podcast. I am very excited to have a friend with us today, Mr. Rusty Mercer from Streamsong Resort, which is, Rusty, what town are you? And you're not even, Streamsong's not even findable on the map anywhere, is it? Is there actually a name of the town?
It is. It's just outside of Bowling Green, Florida. That is our address. But we have made a play to have a zip code that is called Streamsong, Florida.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
That is us. But we're just outside of Bowling Green and Fort Meade.
Yeah, I think probably most superintendents and people in the golf industry know of Streamsong. It is truly one of the more spectacular destination resorts for golf. I have had the pleasure of spending some time with you down there, and more importantly, the pleasure of staying in the resort, which is spectacular. Beautiful, beautiful facility, great restaurants, just a great little setup. And I've kind of watched you as you, certainly through the last golf course, and we'll talk about the whole property, but it is truly a resort, but it is definitely out there. I mean, you go down from Orlando or over from Tampa, you turn right and you go forever, and then there you are. It's just out in the middle of nothing. I don't know if it was you that told us the story or somebody else, but is it true that this used to be an area where they just did drug drops and flew planes into that area?
Oh no, I didn't tell you that.
Okay. Somebody else might.
But I know nothing about that.
Okay, good. Then we won't talk about that. But that goes way, way, way back, long before that. Let's talk about the property. Streamsong is an old phosphorus mine. Right. So, I mean, you yep. can, share us the story. I found this when I first met with you and you told me this story about what they went through to reclaim this property and then make it into what it is today was just absolutely fascinating. And ultimately what it did to the soil, the agronomy that you were then inherited and had to maintain. Tell us the story of what this property was and what they had to do and how many times they had to move this sand around to build this thing and kind of give it what it is.
Sure, Doc. The property is owned by the Mosaic Fertilizer Company, which is the largest producer of phosphate fertilizer in the country, and also potassium. But most of the potassium is mined in the northern tier of the U.S. This particular site began being mined back in the early 50s and was an active mine site from 1951 or 2 for probably 2 decades.
Wow.
When they finished mining the site and moved on, they were using this site as a sand storage facility. So other mine sites that they had around this property, they were pumping all of the sand back to this site. Now, over the years, as this was going on, Mosaic continued to improve their processes of mining. So they would come back to this site because it was all sand, 80 to 120 feet deep of sand.
Of pure
so
sand.
They would re-mine the site over and over. They did this multiple times and collected more rock phosphate out of the site. So the site has been here since the 50s. And again, storing the sand, it had decades for the wind to just blow, for native grasses to begin to develop. And most importantly, they created some topography. They created some ups and downs.
By wind, just by
wind,
yeah.
And just by sheer, they were pumping this sand back with high volumes of water. So the sand was just spilling out of big metal pipes. And then every so often, somebody would come back with a big D8 and they would just push the sand around. Just get it out of the way of the pipe so more could come.
So they could, so it wouldn't block the pipe.
Correct. So, I mean, the site is completely artificial. It's just that the golf people didn't do that. This was done over time with the help of Mother Nature. So then, 12, 13 years ago, along comes a fellow named Rich Mack, who at that time was lead counsel for Mosaic. And decided, guess what? I see something other than just a sand storage facility here. I actually see golf. Rich was a very accomplished player, had played some college golf, and one of his main jobs at that time was to secure future mining permits for the Mosaic Company.
And what year is this? What year is this?
This goes all the way back to 2010, 2011.
That's when he started looking at this as a potential golf site.
Somewhere in that time frame,
okay.
yes. But again, his main job was securing future mining permits. One of the big detractors of a mining company are going to be the environmental groups.
Yeah.
So this was an effort to hold out an olive branch and say, okay, during our remediation processes, we're going to do something other than build ponds or pastures or plant pine trees. We're going to build golf. We're going to build sustainable golf. We're going to provide jobs for a very depressed part of Polk County, Florida, where we are located. Yeah. And we're going to create some sort of a tax base. And it worked. Mosaic has been able to secure permits as they move further and further south. And they hold this up as an example of what they can do in the remediation process.
Are there plans for more golf courses from Mosaic? From that
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think we've accomplished what they set out to, and I don't really see that in our future, although I don't know that.
So when did you get on site at Streamsong? When did you get there?
I was hired in I think it was October of 2010 or 11.
And there was nothing there at the time.
No, we were in the process of building golf holes at that time.
Okay,
Bill
you were.
Cooper and Ben Crenshaw and his crew and Tom Doak and his company were already on site building golf.
We'll talk about that, but I want to go back to the sand because you had said something to me a couple of times, and you just described this. So they kept bringing the sand back. So they would actually take it from site, shoot it down to the phosphorus mine, and then shoot it back, right?
Correct.
All through water. So every time they did that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I have the memory of you saying that every time they would shoot it through these pipes, the water would basically wash it clean and round it a little bit so that you ended up, basically you have, I don't even know how many acres you have, thousands of acres of USGA spec'd California style soil everywhere. Is that a fair assessment?
With one exception, it was not USGA spec.
I'm kidding, of course, but
yeah, all up and down the sides of the roads in this part of the world, they've got big 18 to 24-inch metal pipes with pumps periodically placed to where they are pumping water and moving it and sand from one place to another. That's how they move their matrix when they're digging the soil matrix that contains the rock phosphate. So, once the matrix is separated, they would put the sand back in and send it to a certain site to stockpile it. Mosaic is by law, they have to go back and reclaim mine sites once they're finished mining it. And they use sand to do that. And typically they would just dig ponds into it, plant native vegetation or plant pine trees or whatever the reclamation process may be. So this was a much bigger reclamation job. But yeah, this particular site is nothing but sand. And you can imagine sand being pumped back and forth through these big metal pipes. And you're right, the sand particles just roll across the bottom of this metal pipe, and it wore off all of the edges, and we ended up with a kind of a beach sand here. It's the same size and it's the same shape. So it's very soft.
What's the perk rate of the native soil? Do you know?
When we first started, perk rates were up around 42 to 45 inches an hour.
Across how many acres are we talking about?
300. Well, at this point, it was 300 acres of maintained turf.
So 300 acres of a 40 perk rate. Is that that's what you started with?
Yes.
And you still took the job. Did you know that when you took the job?
I didn't say I was smart, Doc. I
Yes,
just said
you
I was
are.
willing.
Yeah, good. And I mean, that is, I mean, it's a challenge for anybody in our industry to manage 3 acres like that. You're managing 300 acres of sand again, not constructed, but essentially, you know, a straight sand material. So let's go through the process. So you get there, and they're already in construction of both. So just so folks know that may not know Streamsong, you've got 3 properties, 3 different architects, and the first 2 was a Bill Core course and a Tom Doak course. They were already in construction when you got there.
Yeah, I mean, each group had maybe 1 or 2 holes that had been rough graded, rough shaped, and I was brought in to just be a part of that, to help them where I could, to sort of act as the owner's representative during that process of construction, and then obviously to oversee irrigation installation and then grow in when that time came.
Was there a superintendent on site then? Was there anybody involved in doing that before?
There was a Mosaic representative down here who was an engineer. He had no golf experience. He had never done anything like this. And when I got on site, I don't know exactly what happened, but 2 weeks later he was fired. And I was left. I was left holding the whole bag.
Hey, welcome to the 300 acres of pure sand. Go
Yes.
to a golf course.
So I mean, here's this Fortune 500 company that is. You know, they've got their own way of doing things. I had no experience with it, and all of a sudden I'm at the forefront of trying to be the liaison between 2 golf course architecture firms and a Fortune 500 company that's never built golf before.
And 2 pretty different architects. I mean, were they both on site, both Doak and Core Crenshaw? Were they all on site at the same time?
Everybody was on site at the same time. They were working conjunctively, and I must say it was rather seamless.
Oh, really? Oh, that's good to know.
I mean, the routing was done as a partnership between Bill Core and Ben Crenshaw and Tom Doak. Some of the holes that ended up on Tom Doak's golf course were actually holes that Bill Core had found, and some of the holes on Bill Core's golf course were actually holes that Tom Doak had found. But at some point, it became clear that 2 golf courses on this one site is what was going to be in the best interest of the owner. So that's why they began to work together to see if they could fit those 36 holes within this one building envelope.
How did that partnership go? I mean, did that work well between the 2 teams?
Extremely well.
Oh,
it was funny. I knew just about every one of these guys. Mike McCartan dug the bunkers. He was the bunker guy for Tom Doak. Mike used to teach the golf architecture class at the University of Georgia. And every year he would bring the class down to Cuskawilla, where I was the superintendent at the time. And we would go through and talk about Bill Core's work there at that facility. So I've known Mike for years. Bruce Hepner, who ran the job for Tom Doak, he and I have been friends for 15 or 20 years now. And then we had Jeff Bradley, who did the bunker work for Bill Core.
I want to talk
I've
about
known
Jeff, but yeah,
most of my life.
Yeah.
And then Jimbo Wright, I've done 2 other jobs with Jimbo. So we were all friends. We were all accountable to one another, which is really important and very rare, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
The objective here was nobody wanted to let the other guy down.
Oh, good.
And I think as a result of that, we ended up with something fairly special.
Whose vision was it to bring, I mean, arguably 2 of the best modern architects? I mean, that's kind of a great pairing there. Whose vision was that to bring Doak and Core into this picture?
That all went to, again, Rich Mack.
From Mosaic.
He had tremendous vision on that. I think he interviewed pretty much every name in that business, but wanted to do something that may be a little bit atypical of what we consider normal Florida golf to be.
Yeah.
He wanted something different. He wanted something to stand out, and he wanted something that was truly going to be unique and very special at the end of the game. And I think Bill Coore probably said it best very early on. He said, there's an awful lot of really good Florida golf in Florida now. There's no reason to build any more. So let's go a little different way.
Let's not build Florida golf. Yeah.
Let's not build Florida golf.
So how would you describe those two courses? And let's stay with the red and blue for now. But how would you describe those two courses? And if somebody were to come to you and say, if it's not Florida golf, what is it? How do you tell us that?
Well, it's more European, I think, in its look.
Yeah.
It may be a little faster and firmer than the normal average Florida golf or Southeastern golf, and we strive very hard to achieve that. The two courses took on the personalities of the architects themselves.
Yes.
Bill Coore is a framer. Bill likes for you to stand on the tee, and he will tell you the proper way to play the golf hole, just from how he built the hole. He frames it. He's telling you exactly, hit it here, then hit it there, then move forward. Tom is not necessarily a framer of golf holes. He leaves a little bit of, I'm not sure what to do off of this tee. I'm not sure where the proper line is. But in the end, even though they have the same design philosophy of what constitutes quality golf, they go about it a little bit differently. The bunkers at blue are much bigger than the bunkers at red. Blue is more of a second shot golf course, where
blue is the doe course.
That's the doe course.
Yeah.
Tom lets you hit it maybe in various different lines off the tee, but then he's very demanding with that next shot. Whereas on the red golf course, Bill Coore and Ben Crenshaw's golf course, they're very demanding off the tee. They want you to hit it here. So there's a lot of differences in the golf course, even though the design philosophy is very similar.
Right. So these are considered links. I mean, is that what the average golfer would think of when they look at those two courses?
Doc, I think they're links-like. The true definition of a links golf course means it has to be hard by the sea, and we're in the middle of Florida,
really? Okay.
so we have no ocean to deal with.
Yeah.
But I would say that they fall in the category of links-like.
Is there a tree on the property?
Yeah, but they're all mostly peripheral, and they're really poor. They're poor trees.
Yeah. So
it's straight sand.
Yeah. So how much earth moving did either one of those two have to do for that property?
Virtually none.
So they really just kind of. So I've had a couple of experiences, and I've even shared this on our podcast, and I tell this story often of the course up in Long Island, Friars Head. Bobby Rainham from Atlantic, who I think you know, took me to this piece of the North Fork of Long Island is just a long flat stretch of old potato land. And he took me to this place where they were going to build this wonderful Bill Coore property. He goes, look at this. And I look at it as a piece of flat property. I'm like, Bobby, this is horrible. This is a flat piece of nothing. He goes, oh, that's not where it's going to be. It's going to be up and over the dunes and around. And if anybody's ever seen Friars Head, it's spectacular. But the story was, and please share this if this is similar. Bill apparently just walked those dunes with a sketch pad for 30 days and then ended up coming out with a design. A piece of property like yours that is so wide open and relatively flat, really, how does an architect with the vision of Bill Coore or even Tom Doak, how do they visualize what has ultimately come out of that from what they started with? How did that process happen for you guys?
Well, I mean, both of those guys possess a gift that I don't have, and frankly, most people don't have.
Right.
There's
why who they are.
Yeah, I mean, there's something about the way that they see a piece of property, and that the way that they can piece together golf holes in such a way that makes sense, that leads you from point A to point B. I can't say for certain that I've ever walked a new routing with either Bill Coore or Tom Doak, but I've listened to a lot of their stories to where they just start walking a property, and they begin to get a feel for flow. They begin to to put together things in such a way that a golf course is meant to tell some sort of story.
Yeah.
I always get irritated with memberships when they say, well, let's take number 10 and make it number 1. No, there was a reason why an architect built a golf course the way that he did. It's there to tell some sort of story. Right. It's there to take you in a logical sense of progression from point A to point B to point C. This is not a willy-nilly kind of thing. There's rationale behind it. There was thought put behind it.
Yeah.
And in their minds, at least, it makes sense.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I've played both the blue and the red, and you know, and I look at it a lot when I'm, you know, and I'm a horrible golfer, as you may know now. But you know, but I walk it or I play it, and I think of what these guys must have gone through, because it is such. I mean, they're both spectacular golf courses, and I look at these things and I'm like, how do you get this vision from what was 300 acres of, you know, pretty much nothingness, really? I mean, it baffles me that they were able to, either one of them were able to come up with that vision. I mean, you know, and again, you know, I'm a Bill Cork junkie, but I just look at that and find that whole routing process fascinating. And
well, they see things that we don't see.
Yeah, obviously.
I mean, I've even when I got here, just looking at the cleared out areas that both of these groups had done, I don't see golf.
Right.
I just don't have that kind of imagination.
No, I wouldn't either. Yeah.
But they do. They
Really
can see it clearly in their mind's eye that, oh yeah, there's going to be bunkers over here. The green's going to flash up here, and you just go, oh, okay, I guess, but I don't see it.
Yeah. When were they both done? What year?
We opened up in, I believe it was 2014.
Okay, so 14, and they were both open at the same time?
We opened the entire red and blue. We were waiting on clubhouses to get finished.
Yeah.
So that we had a place for people to be. So we opened up, I believe it was January of 2014.
Okay, that makes sense. That's probably about the time when I know I was down there right about that time. Talk to us about the new course, the black course.
Black's been open now. I guess it's been 3 years. That's a bit more lynxy, maybe. It's a little flatter, doesn't have the same elevation change. But I will say that Gil Hance and Jim Wagner just did a phenomenal job of creating golf that's just fun. I mean, pure, unadulterated fun.
Yeah.
It's great, big, wide fairways with a lot of tumble from tee to green. Greens are just monstrous. They average a little over 30,000 square feet each.
Wow.
With a lot of peripheral movement around the edges of these greens. It flattens out where the pinnable areas are. And that was a really fun project to watch take place, because I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, put yourself in Gil's shoes for just a minute. Here he's been hired to build a golf course at a facility that's been fairly well received internationally. You've got Bill Corr and Ben Crenshaw across the road. You've got Tom Doak across the road. Right. And now here you are on center stage. So Gil had a lot of pressure on him to do something not just good, but unique and special, and most importantly, different from what red and blue were. And he just hit it out of the park.
Was he given any guidelines? I mean, did the company or anybody come to him and say, you know, we got this beautiful Bill Corr and this beautiful Tom Doak, you know, this traditional style, do something, you know, different and fun? I mean, was that all his vision? I mean, I think it's your description of this course, the word you use, which is big, is probably the best word in my mind for that property. And it is. I haven't played it, but it just is so big and grandiose. It's really quite fascinating to me. But was where was the vision from? Him?
I think there were some general parameters expressed by, again, Rich Mack. He was still on the property and in charge at that time, but the vision was all Gill's and Jim Wagner's.
Really?
They took what they were told. They spent a lot of time looking at red and blue and what the other two guys had done, and they came up with this. Again, which was it's big and it's bold.
Yes, it is.
And it's hard for me to think of too many golf courses that I've ever played that are just more fun than that thing is.
And that's what golf should be, for goodness sake.
It should be. It absolutely
really
should be. And that's reflected, I think, in the way we maintain it. You know, there is no maintained rough here. Fairways are huge. It's a little bit difficult to lose golf balls.
I was going to say, you can't lose the ball there, can you?
Well, you can, but you don't have anybody to blame but yourself.
Yeah, well, I can lose golf.
And it's fun golf. It's what I think the game needs.
Well, you said something that the soil or the actual land was a little bit different in natural format than what Bill and Tom had to work with. How was it different?
It was flatter. It was not that same native-y sand that we had to work with at Red and Blue. There was a lot of clay.
Oh, really? So the agronomy is radically different then too.
Well, we had to change it. So we had a mountain of sand right next to the site. So we moved sand. That entire site is capped, or nearly the entire site.
Yeah.
We trucked in sand and we built up a 4 to 5 foot deep sand layer on top of the clay, and then created the contour out of that.
How much land moving was there?
A lot.
Yeah.
I'm probably not at liberty to tell you the exact numbers, but it was a lot.
All right. A lot's a good number. That's a good number. You know,
there's a completely different scenario.
Yeah.
Although it was the same stand that we do have at Red and Blue, it just wasn't there. We had to move it there.
Oh, so it came from a mosaic mine?
Yes.
It was old phosphorus sand?
Yes.
Had it been rolled and stripped as much?
Same thing.
All right. So you're working, so at least you're relatively consistent across the board. Tell me, describe black a little bit. I mean, there's some really interesting holes. I mean, you got the pot belly. I remember, I mean, I haven't seen it probably since it was open, but I remember standing when you were fairly close to being done with the property, but I stood on 18T, and that thing is unbelievable. I mean, it's just big and grandiose, and now with the new clubhouse behind it, it's I think it's spectacular, but it's big. You know, you keep using that word. Walk through for folks that have never been to this property, just talk a little bit about, you know, some of the uniqueness of the black course, the Gil Hans course.
Well, it really jumps out and grabs you at the par 3 fifth hole. That's a long uphill par 3, giant bunkering on the right that just falls off the edge of the earth, with a green that's just rolling all over the place. The left side of the green is protected with some knobs that are 6 and 8 feet tall. Banks hard left to right. It's can stretch out to 245 yards. We don't play that.
Yeah,
but,
thank goodness.
It's one of those holes that just kind of really grabs your attention, and it's one of those holes that you're thinking about when you tee off on number 1. You're thinking about that shot at number 5.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes,
cool.
it's that kind of a shot.
Yeah.
Number 9 is a gargantuan punch bowl hole.
Yeah.
You know, it's a fairly easy driving hole, but when you get to the middle of the fairway, you can't see the pin anywhere. It banks up real big in front of you, and then falls off into a giant punch bowl that you can't see what your ball's doing inside of there.
Can you see a golfer on that green from the fairway or from the tee? If I'm standing on the green by the pin, they couldn't see me.
No.
I'm basically below fairway grade.
You are completely hidden, and we're dependent on caddies to kind of marshal that situation. Yeah. But it's great fun to hit a shot up there because you find yourself running up to the top of the punch bowl to see what your ball did.
Right, right.
And did I get close? Did I stay in this thing? So it's great fun. It is a par 73 golf course, so there are 5 par 5s, and the story behind that was, again, it's back to that fun thing. People love to play par 5s. We tend to score a little bit better on par 5s. So that gave it some flexibility. But as you work your way around the golf course, you go into an area that Mosaic always referred to as the glove, which was back to all the native sand, just like red and blue. And it's a series of 6 holes back there that when you get back there, it's a completely different feel. You're isolated. You feel like you're alone within this golf course where it's just you and the golf hole. And it's just a great feeling. But then as you turn and you come down 18 and you're heading back to the clubhouse, you have these big, broad vistas off to the north of these old native pine tree plantings that are mature. You feel like you're in a different area all of a sudden.
Because you are. I mean, it looks radically different back in that corner of the property.
It does, and it's just it's a tremendous walk in the wintertime, which is our main golf season.
Yeah.
Again, you feel cleansed and rejuvenated when you come off the golf course.
I love that description. I mean, I think that's a wonderful way to describe that experience, and that's really what it is. Are there any carts on your property? Is it all walking?
We do. No, we're walking only from January 1st, I think, until the middle of April. When again, that is the bulk of our golf season. It's cool. It's it's 72 degrees and 50. It's
perfect golf.
So we don't allow carts unless you have a major medical pre-approved situation.
So it's a walking property. All 3 courses are walking.
All 3 golf courses. It's a beautiful sight to drive this many golf courses, and all you see are people out walking with caddies.
Exactly. Which is the way golf is played.
Yes, but after that, the shoulder seasons begin to get a little hot. Summer is definitely too hot.
Yeah.
So we do allow carts through that to accommodate people who don't want to walk or who can't walk anymore.
Yeah, at 95 degrees and 110% humidity.
That's no good.
Yeah.
That's no good.
And I'm going to ask you a couple questions that I know you're not going to answer, but answer this one. Which course gets the most play?
It's funny. We most of the people come down here didn't come here to play one golf course. They came down to play all 3.
Yeah, I would think.
And we made a conscious decision at the very beginning to try not to build a golf course that was clearly superior to the other 2. We didn't want that. We wanted 3 golf courses that were all great. You can't come to Streamsong and just say, I only want to play this. People come down and they want to play all 3. So it's about a third and a third and a third.
Yeah. So that's typical, is that this is a destination property. And
Correct.
It's, so you spend a night, you have a great meal, couple drinks, and then you get up tomorrow and play another couple rounds. I mean, I think
our typical guest is down here for 2 nights and 3 days of golf.
So, and you've got facilities there that would accommodate, guests that are not golfers. So if I come in with my wife or some friends that don't want to play golf, there's lots of other things to be doing there as well. So it really is a destination.
It really is. Yes. We've got a really nice spa. We do some guided bass fishing that is just unreal.
Yeah.
And then a trap shooting range.
Oh, I didn't know you had a trap shooting range. That's nice.
Yes. It's really good.
Nice. I'm going to ask you this, and you're not going to answer me, but what is your favorite course?
Doc, I went through the Mosaic marketing class on day 1, and I have 3 children, and I love them all the same.
There you go. Perfect answer. But I love the fact that it is at a destination, and I love your description of the black course. I think that is a perfect description of that property. And I look forward to getting down there someday after this silly COVID thing and actually getting out and losing some golf balls on the black. Let's talk about the agronomy of a pure sand property. You and I spend a lot of time talking about soils and biological soil management. And, you and I have been back and forth on, how do you manage something like this? And my take on activating carbon and biology, but how do you manage? When you got there, you and I had known each other a little bit when you were up in Georgia, but you had to be looking at this thing. And I know you were a soils guy, you think soils. What was your first thought when you started thinking, how am I going to manage this thing? And then walk us through, what you've done to be successful on the agronomy of a pure sand property.
Well, it was obvious to me at first sight that this number one, it wasn't going to be easy.
No.
Number two, it was going to require patience and time. But number three, and probably foremost, the development of humus had to happen. And anything and everything that you could do to begin that process of enriching this sand with a more humus type material was paramount to long-term success.
Yeah.
Which meant, and you know this, I've bought a lot of it from you. It meant a lot of applications of chicken manure, constant almost.
Compost, yeah. Carbon.
Liquids that had these biostimulant type materials in it. For the first time in my life, I was actually applying microbes.
Yeah.
Constantly for the first 3 or 4 or 5 years to try and expedite this whole process of breakdown of cellulose and lignin in those rhizomes and stolons and sloughed off stems and roots. But I knew that we were going to battle and sometimes really just be holding on until we got to a certain point. The one thing I think that surprised me more than anything else is I really thought this was going to take 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
It didn't.
No.
It took 3 to 4.
Yeah.
Is all
Mother Nature gives us.
I've got a soil layer in my greens at red and blue right now that is fully 6 to 8 inches deep.
Yeah.
And it's a really nice soil. My fairways are 3 to 4 inches deep, and we're holding water now.
Yeah.
For longer periods of time.
Now you're going the opposite way. You're managing back to a traditional course from a pure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was shocked at how fast Mother Nature does this process.
Yeah. If you let her do it.
If you stay out of the way, if you simply sit back and just try and direct this.
Yeah.
It knows how to do it.
When you got there, did you go to conventional wisdom and start pounding this place with synthetic nitrogens to grow in?
We had to. We used a lot of controlled release materials because that early on that was the only way we were going to be able to feed this stuff.
Yeah, you had to get it pushed. I guess the reason for the question is, how much thatch did you come out of the chute with? How bad was that once you got through the grow-in process? You must have had a fairly good lignous thatchy layer there for a while.
We did. We had probably a ½ inch that was there within the first 18 to 24 months. But the key for me, Doc, and it always has been, is that you have to control that on the bottom at the same rate it's happening at the top. So even though this may be happening, if you've applied all of these kinds of materials as it's going on, it never becomes a real problem. I'm sitting here at year 8 or 9 now, and I haven't aerified 1 square inch of this property. I don't own an aerifier.
Oh, really? There you go.
We don't own one.
You don't need one.
We don't need one. It's
sand.
The sand site can't compact.
Yeah.
It just can't. So I feel like we've done a reasonably good job of addressing that cap layer, that thatch layer at the same rate it's being formed.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, I think that's the that is how you are successful with any agronomic endeavor.
Yeah. Is that top? Now you obviously are managing that top inch mechanically. You're venting, you're spiking, you're doing things of that nature.
We do some of that, yes.
Did you have to do that early on, or was that something that came to fruition after a few years and you started to build the humus level?
It was a few years before we got to the point where you could put anything like that on there
Right.
without making a mess.
Yeah.
You know, again, the sand is round, it's all uniformly sized. It wanted to track. So we
Right.
couldn't do anything for the first couple of years.
What did you learn? You got through the red and blue, and then you go in and you build the black. Agronomically, you're pretty much the same. What did you do differently? What did you learn in the grow-in process when you started going into the black course with this sand that that you've inherited? What changed? What was different for you? What was better or worse?
The main change was I knew not to be scared.
Oh, good.
I wasn't worried a bit. I knew what was going to work. I mean, with red and blue, I was an emotional disaster because I honestly wasn't sure if I could do this or if anybody could do this.
I don't know. I don't know anybody but you that could do that. It's pure sand.
Well, that's not true, but I was the one that was in that hot seat. But at Black, there were no concerns. There were no worries.
You'd been there before.
I didn't lose a second of sleep. I knew exactly what the formula was. And again, the same thing is happening over at Black now that happened at Red and Blue. The premise of saying, let's get soil chemistry where it needs to be, and then allow soil biology to just sort of fall into place, even if we need to help it a little bit. It works. It works every single time.
Yeah.
Under every circumstance.
I would be the first to admit that is true, being a 30-year veteran of this. You've had the privilege, really, to work with Dick Pasala for all these years, who is, one of my idols. I mean, I think the guy's brilliant. I'd love to get Dick on this podcast one of these days, too, before he completely retires. But, you and I, when we first met, you had all that work from Brookside. I mean, and Dick is one of the most classic soils guys that you'll ever meet. And, you were dialed in at that point. And I guess the only thing that we really kind of talked about at that point was soil biology. But, Dick brought you, I mean, I can't imagine what Dick thought of this property, knowing Dick, when he first came down and looked at your property. What advice did Dick Pasala give you on Streamsong sand when he first arrived on your site?
Dick did all of the early soil testing on this site prior to construction.
Yeah.
So he was very well of the property and what was going to happen. And I the first time I talked to Dick, I think he said, "Have you lost your mind, boy?"
You really need this job?
But I think he was just kidding. He said, "Listen, I've known Dick for most of my life."
Yeah.
And again, you're right. I was very fortunate to meet Dick Pasala at a very young age, where I was very impressionable, very young superintendent, and every time Dick has told me something, it's turned out to be true. The man's 86, 87 years old now.
Yeah.
And he's seen everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I can honestly tell you, I don't think Dick has ever given me a falsehood. But he said early on, here's what's going to have to happen. This is going to take some time. It's going to take some effort, and you're going to have to fall back on all of these things that we've talked about for the prior 30 years.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to implement them relentlessly and without backing off. And I took that to heart, and we went full bore. And we've turned a nothing soil into what I would consider a super high quality dirt.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a picture that I use in my Academy slide set of you holding a probe, and the profile is a good 3-4 inches of humus, which is incredibly impressive. You said something that and you've taught me probably as much as anybody on this whole Florida soil thing. When we first came down to Florida, and you might have been one of the first places that we came to, so we got thrown right into the fire. But we really thought that this whole concept of building humus in sand, in these light sandy soils in this temperate environment, was going to be a real challenge. And from a business standpoint, we're trying to provide materials that are helping to build this humus. We really thought it was going to take a very, very long time to get to a point where this would change. And from a business standpoint, we looked at that and said, wow, this is going to be a hard sell. It's going to be a challenge to get people to see that you got, it's a catch-22. You really need it, but it takes so long to get there. The economics, the patience. I wasn't confident at all that as a business talking about carbon-based fertility and biological soil management, that we were going to be able to make an impact in that Florida market. But you taught us that it was that 3-year cycle, and yours was by far the worst environment from a holistic soil standpoint. But the fact that this thing really kicked in for you, and I think you're as surprised as I am that it was only 3 years. That had to be a real eye opener when you started to see the changes.
Well, it was. I mean, it was shocking, but I mean, we tracked it from a 1/4 inch depth to a 1/2 inch depth to 1 inch depth, and it
just kept
it's
growing.
just amazing. Yeah, it's just amazing to watch this. I mean, you see the tannins begin to bleed down through the probes that you're pulling,
Colors there,
and then that turns into a fluffy, light, humusy type material, and then the next thing you know, you're down at 2 inches, and it just it reinforces that Mother Nature knows what she's doing.
Yes.
And as a superintendent, I think sometimes we have a tendency to make things more difficult than they actually are, versus viewing ourselves as the orchestra conductor. Right. Just don't do things that are going to disrupt the natural sense of things. Add things that make this more efficient and more effective, and then get out of the way.
Get out of the way. Let Mother Nature do it. She knows better than we do.
She's been
doing it longer.
She does.
This what you really have done here is, I've talked a lot about Jerry Bernetti. Jerry was my business partner, obviously, and founded this business with us. But he was a real student of regenerative agriculture, and it's a very big conversation. There's actually a great movie, if you haven't seen it, and I encourage everybody to. It's a little out there perhaps, but the science is actually very sound, called Kiss the Ground. And they're talking about regenerative agriculture, taking deserted properties and turning them into productive soils. That's exactly what you did here. You took basically a desert and you turned it into an oasis. I mean, it's a lush, beautiful property. And because you let humus build, you put carbon into the soil, and you let Mother Nature do her job, and you got out of her way. That's the foundation of we can save the world. I'm getting a little out there, but we can save the world with those kind of concepts.
That's what I love about you, Doc.
Yeah,
you get out there sometimes.
I go off on tangents, but I'm allowed to do that at my elder stage.
Absolutely.
Which is good. Let me, I've warned you I'm going to talk about this, but like I said, I am a Bill Core junkie, and I love his work, and I started telling you this before we went live. I met Jeff Bradley, who is Bill's shaper, for the first time, and maybe the only time, and he wouldn't remember me if he ran into me in an elevator, but I ran into him and met him when he was doing Trinity Forest in Dallas. Which is a neat property, almost very similar to yours because it's very open and sandy and and all that. And I've always, not knowing at the time a whole lot about really architectural development, I was always fascinated by Bill's bunkers. And I was telling the guys at Trinity about my love for Bill's work and the bunkers. He goes, "Oh, that's not Bill. That's Jeff Bradley. You got to meet Jeff." And so, and I'm like, "Wow, your bunker work is amazing." And then I come to your shop one day and I start telling you that story, and you start telling me the story of Jeff Bradley. If you would mind, and I hope that Jeff won't mind us telling this story, but I loved your story of Jeff Bradley. If you don't think he would mind, and I'd love to have Jeff come on board one day and talk to us, but tell us your history with Jeff and who he is and your background with him. It's a great story.
Well, I will preview anything that I say about Jeff with this. Jeff has come farther in life than anybody that I know. And I love him dearly. And I've known him for a very long time. So Jeff, if you're hearing this, there's that first. Now I'm going to tell the stories.
Thank you.
No, I was a very young superintendent many years ago. My first superintendent's job was at a place called the Hot Springs Country Club in Hot Springs, Arkansas. I knew nothing, and I'm not ashamed to say that at this point. It was a big place, 45 holes of golf that had about a $400,000 budget at that time.
Wow.
Just very few resources and a really tough membership. But we did something there. We made it a little better. And somewhere into maybe 5 or 6 years into that job, the club decided to renovate their oldest golf course. And they landed on a very young company at that time called Core & Crenshaw.
What year is this?
Oh my gosh, this goes back probably early 90s.
Oh,
maybe
wow,
even
okay.
late 80s. It's so far back I don't even really remember.
When we were young men.
I was a much younger. I had hair. Hair at that time. Sure. So we hired them. They came in, and the guy that was going to be running that job for us was a golf icon named Dave Axland. Dave has been a part of some of the greatest golf courses built in this country in the last 25 years, and a true character in this business, and a dear friend. But Dave needed some guys to help him do bunker work. Now, Jeff had been a fairly recent hire. He was on Jeff was having some substance abuse issues at that time, and he was on a work release program where he could come in and work, but then he had to go right back to wherever it was that he was staying. And I had given Jeff a chance to come out and work with us. But Dave he said, I need some guys that are very hardworking and can help me with this bunker work. So I gave him Jeff.
And why did you give him Jeff?
Well, I'm not sure. Just for whatever reason, it turned out to be Jeff. Jeff had no experience with anything. The only thing I had let Jeff do up until that time was empty trash cans and clean out ball washers. Well, Dave came storming in the first day, and he looks at me and he goes, "Is this the best you got?" I said, "Well, let's give it a little time." Well, I mean, one day led to the next. Jeff griped and complained about it, and I just said, "Jeff, just stick with it. This might be good for you." And sure enough, after a few weeks, Jeff began to take to this. He began to take some pride in this.
What was he
and
actually
Dave
doing?
changed his mind.
Was he actually helping shape, or what was the actual work?
He was running a shovel, Doc. He was smoothing out the
grunting.
bottoms of the bunker. Dave was doing all of the excavation work.
Right.
Jeff was just there watching and observing.
And
But as the months went by, Dave started putting Jeff on the backhoe, and Jeff started digging these incredible bunkers. It was like it was second nature. But to make a long story short, when that job finished, Bill Core came to me and he said, "Rusty, what would you think about letting Jeff go and coming to work for us. We think he has potential. And I said, Bill, I think that would be great. I think Jeff needs something like this to happen in his life. So they did. They hired Jeff full-time to be the bunker expert on their golf courses.
And he is.
Now, the first job that Jeff did was the golf club at Cuskawilla,
Your golf
which
club.
happened to be the next superintendent's job that I took. So Jeff and I actually left Hot Springs together and drove from Hot Springs all the way over to Greensboro, Georgia, to take the same job at the same time. Jeff did the bunkers at the golf club at Cuskawilla. That was his first solo job with Coore and Crenshaw.
So he wasn't working for you at that point. He was now working for Bill.
He was working for Bill.
Right.
He was going to that job to do the bunker work. I was going that job to be the first superintendent.
So
Jeff and I have a very long history together.
Yeah. And again, I can't accolades to his work. I mean, anybody knows, a Coore Crenshaw property, you see Jeff's work, but, I love the fact that you took this kid who clearly needed, some guidance and probably wasn't your best employee at the time, and you threw him into this hole, and look what came out of it. I mean, that is one of the classic American stories that you can possibly have. And he's obviously he's had a long and healthy and incredibly productive career, and they've been very prolific. I understand he's also a pretty advanced drummer. Is that right?
Jeff is extremely accomplished. I think, that's always been Jeff's conflict is am I a musician? Or am I a builder of world-class golf course bunkers?
Yeah. Darn, that's got to be a tough one to battle internally.
Well, it's always funny. He drives everybody crazy on every job he goes to. Whoever he's living with, they've got to figure out how to soundproof a room.
Because he brings.
How do we keep Jeff from driving me insane with this incessant pounding on these drums? But I think everybody knows the early beginnings of Jeff Bradley, and I think everybody has a great deal of appreciation for how far he's come and what he's been able to accomplish with his life.
So Cuskawilla was his first real bunkering job?
That was the first job where he was on his own.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's
yes.
You still talk to him, I understand, on a regular basis.
Fairly regular. I don't see him nearly as much as I would like to, because again, he is a character, and he's fun. He's funny, and we share a large part of our professional backgrounds.
Yeah.
And there aren't that many people that you can say that about. But he and I kind of started a lot of this together.
Yeah. Well, I love the story, and I love his work, and I just think it's a great American golf story, and anybody that knows his work, certainly appreciates it, which is good. I'm going to end on this one thing, and I don't know, I'm going to share with you a story that has changed my life a lot of ways. But one day, sitting in your office, you shared with me, and I don't know how we got on this subject, but you basically suggested I should take the supplement MSM. And I've been taking it ever since. And it changed a lot of, at the time I was really, I was traveling a lot. I wasn't eating well. I wasn't doing much of anything. But I've been a MSM junkie, which is a sulfur. So you explain it to us, because you know it probably better than I do. Are you still using that supplement?
Religiously. But what surprises me and disappoints me about that story, Doc, is that I've been known to eat dirt just to get microbial content in my gut. And for you to take advice from me about what to put in your body is a little scary.
Well, you gotta learn somewhere, I know.
MSM is an interesting product. It's sulfur is something that is very difficult to get in your diet anymore.
Yeah, it is.
You need to be eating raw vegetables that have not been processed, and that's hard to do.
Nobody does.
So to get this sulfur in your system, there are claims of joint health, gut health, I find it to be particularly beneficial in controlling allergies
Yeah.
in this part of the world. I have a very bad back. I had back surgery about 15 years ago. I've got 4 screws that hold my back together. And now it's arthritic, and the MSM has got some literature written on joint health, dealing with those kinds of issues. And I have found that to be true. I can play golf 3 and 4, 5 days in a row now without dying.
Oh, there you go.
So it's an interesting material. My dad is a veterinarian, and he did a lot of research years ago, back in the 70s, when he was working for the Food and Drug Administration in Beltsville, Maryland. He had done a lot of research with this particular material on animal health and joint health, spreading these materials on racehorses' knees, for example. And they were finding very positive results. So I learned a lot about that from him.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I have found it to be beneficial in some ways. Now, they also have claims of hair growth.
How's that
I don't
going?
know if I believe. I don't know if I believe that or not.
Well, it's working for me. I don't know. I found a product that's actually got turmeric, chondroitin, and the MSM in it, and it's
Yes.
and like you, I mean, my lifestyle has not been really great on my back. But since I've been religious with those kind of products, but it's funny because when you talk about it, even with your dad, when you talk about those kind of things, the analogy between what we're doing in our bodies and what we're doing in our soils is pretty similar. I mean, like you said, you're feeding the gut, and the gut is microbiology. It's the biological piece of our, of where everything happens in our body. And that's really what our soil is. It's a microbiological entity that, like you said, if you get out of Mother Nature's way, it really works well. So all we're doing is really kind of helping Mother Nature in the body, and we're helping Mother Nature in the soil. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you so much for spending some time with me. I am grateful for your friendship and your support. And it was a real pleasure. We could probably talk for another hour. Maybe we'll do this again in the spring when you have time. But I want to thank you for joining us on our podcast and for everything that you've taught me. As you can see, I probably learned more from you than you might have ever from me. But that's how it should be, right?
Well, I think we all learn from each other, and I always enjoy the time I get to spend with you, Doc. I've learned an awful lot from you as well.
Well, I hope we can get down. I want to bring my whole team down someday, and because they want to play your property. So that's really more their interest. I want to come down and have you meet all of our guys and share with them some of the stories firsthand. So hopefully in the spring, if we can shake this silly virus, we can actually get back out and break bread again. Like I said, I want to bring our guys down and hang out with you and play the black course, because it does sound like a lot of fun. But thank you for joining me. Thank you for being a friend, and we will certainly be in touch very shortly.
Sounds good. Take care of yourself, okay?
Thank you. And that is another Earthworks podcast. We are available anywhere podcasts are available. We've got an awful lot of podcasts on our website. So please find a way to join us for a future podcast. And thank you so much.